Hello and welcome to Medi Concepts. Now, this session is just to give you a very brief overview of the syllabus of medical physiology. Obviously, if you don't know what you intend to learn, it's very hard to learn that. So this is just a brief outline. I'll give a more detailed outline of individual segments when I start those segments. Since I'll be taking up general physiology first, so I'll outline that in a little bit detail. So your syllabus includes, first is general physiology, where we'll talk about the normal structure and function of a mammalian cell. Then we'll talk about the very important homeostasis. What is the composition of intracellular fluid? What is the composition of extracellular fluid? How is it maintained? How is intercellular communication, how does it occur? Because again, cells speak to one another through different signals, which are again some or the other ions and molecules. Then maintaining this homeostasis involves a lot of transport of ions, nutrients, gases between the intra and the extracellular fluid, and how that transport occurs, what are the different mechanisms, how that is regulated, that will be covered. Then the importance of pH, what is the buffer system active in our body, what are the different buffer systems in fact, how is pH regulated, what range do we have to maintain. Also a little bit about what happens if that pH is going to get deranged, acidosis and alkalosis, the metabolic form and the respiratory form. We'll talk about that also. We'll talk about the resting membrane potential. Every cell, its surface has some membrane potential which varies from cell to cell depending again upon its function. So we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about the relevance of resting membrane potential and what is the normal resting membrane potential for which cell and how it correlates to its function. So general physiology is just going to be about that. Then second, we'll be talking about then hematology, in which we'll talk about the three important cell lines, RBC, WBC and platelets, how they are formed, what is their normal function, what is their normal lifespan, how they go through the system. In RBC, again important will be hemoglobin, we'll talk about that, and again in detail how its metabolism occurs. So about that metabolism I'll take up the biochemistry session also. Then we'll talk about WBC, platelet, we'll talk about the clotting system, we'll talk about the blood group, the normal physiology, and just a hint about how it correlates to diseases. Not much, but just to give you an understanding that why you are reading and what relevance it is going to have. Then nerve and muscle physiology, only tissue perspective. We are not talking about the organ or the organ system, just nerve, how the conduction occurs there, what is the regulation, and muscles, the different types of muscles, how they are functioning. Then we will learn about the GIT. Again, its function, there's a lot of neuroendocrine activity involved there, which we will talk about there. It is a very well regulated system. Also it has immune function, which we will talk again. Immune function is done by GIT, by your white blood cells. So we will talk about immunity in different segments. Then cardiovascular system, we'll talk about not just how the heart pumps your blood, how it is maintained in the vessels, then about the electrical activity, because your brain is not telling your heart to contract in a certain fashion. It is happening automatically. There is a pacemaker there in your heart naturally. So about how your heart actually functions automatically, that is something that we will talk about. We will talk about its normal rhythm and how to interpret ECG. Just we'll have a very detailed outline when we take up the individual segments, just to give you an overview. So that is what we'll take up in CVS, again in respiratory. We'll talk about the lungs and how the exchange of gases take place. Simply. Renal, we'll talk about how the fluid and electrolyte balance is maintained within your body by your kidneys, and a little bit about the endocrinal function. Endocrine function is performed not just by the typical endocrine organs that you know of, but in segments even by your kidney, by your skin. So we'll take all that up in endocrinology. Then in reproductive, we'll take up not just the reproductive portion, we'll also talk about the sex hormones, and we'll also talk about the physiology of pregnancy. That will also be taken up in this reproductive physiology itself. Then in neurophysiology, we will talk about the CNS, the PNS, the autonomic nervous system, the reticular activating system, and very importantly, your sensory organs. You may forget that. How you hear, how you taste. Again, their correlating their structure with function becomes very important. And finally, integrated physiology, the most beautiful portion. Integrated physiology will be about different conditions in which different systems will be working together to maintain some physiologic balance. I'll give you example and you get it. Like infancy. Infancy is a very special physiologic state. It's not the same as an adult body. There are differences and you have to know of it. Physiology of aging. Physiologic consequences of a sedentary life. People keep telling you should stay active. Why? You learn it there. Exercise physiology. Don't over-exercise. It also can strain your heart. It happens. There are, constrictive myopathies have been seen. Hypertrophic myopathy has been seen in athletes. Their heart rate tends to slow down, and to a certain extent it stays within the healthy range, and then it can also get pathological. So understanding exercise physiology. Understanding physiology of meditation, that is something new. We didn't have that in our days. It's more upcoming. We had meditation, but we never read very well about what are the physiological changes occurring in your body during meditation, how it varies, how you differentiate it from sleep, because both rejuvenate. Sleep, you will read a lot about sleep in neurophysiology, but yes, to compare, temperature regulation, pressure regulation. You have cold, you go to Himalayas and outside it's very cold. So to a great extent your body will try to conserve its heat, and how it will do that. Pressure regulation. Adaptation of any sort to different changes. This will all be taken up in integrated physiology. But again, we can understand that only once we have gone through all the other segments. So this was an overview of your syllabus for medical physiology. Now see you in the next video with a class on general physiology. Happy learning.